The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Jesus went around to all towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and curing every disease and illness. At the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with compassion for them, because they were troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send laborers for his harvest." Then he summoned his 12 and gave them authority over unclean spirits to drive them out and to cure every disease and every illness. Sisters and brothers, the Gospel of the Lord. My dear sisters and brothers, a happy feast of St. John Vianney. Today, as we celebrate St. John Vianney, and he being our patron, we can look at him from so many directions. He is a man of so many dimensions, so many facets to his ministry. And yet, based on the gospel of the day, I'd like to look at him as someone who is teaching and preaching, healing wounds and warming hearts. St. John Vianney, as he was growing up as a young seminarian, had to struggle to meet the basic requirements at the seminary. In fact, he didn't have his basic schooling, and so it was a struggle for him to catch up. And he would go for tuitions to his spiritual director, his pastor, who so lovingly taught him, and with a lot of patience. And with much perseverance, he would make up for what he lacked naturally. And you are also aware of the struggle that he had to be ordained. But then, finally, when he is ordained, notice that change. You know, the words of Paul comes to my mind. God chose what is foolish to shame the wise. God chose what is weak to bring down the strong. God chose what is not in order to bring to nothing things that are. And that seems to be a verse written just about our patron, St. John Vianney. He is the weak of God who would stand before the strong and show them the power of God. He is, in the words of his seminary professor, the foolishness of God that would bring to shame the wisdom of the world. He is the one who was hurting that would bring so much of healing to the rest of the world. A man who would teach and preach. A man who would heal wounds and warm hearts. How else do you put it? The fact that he would be there in that little chapel of reconciliation in the confessional for 16 to 17 hours a day. I wonder how he did it. Sometimes I grudge having to sit there for an hour once a week. And in winter, the man would sit for 11 to 12 hours. Look at the way the man would deprive himself so that he could be generous with the other. He would sleep just for 2 hours. And also that last verse about Jesus empowering these apostles with the power to drive out demons. It looks a little comical. The whole day, John Vianney would be chasing out demons. And at night, they who would be taunted and tormented by Satan for 35 years. Now, that is St. John Vianney, a man who didn't just teach and preach, who in his own way, in his own person, in his words and works, in his life and liturgy became the lesson for the people to learn and the message they had to hear. He didn't just teach and preach. And he didn't also just go about healing wounds and warming hearts. His own presence brought about that healing in the lives of so many. And like his master, the Lord, he would always forgive sins and thereby bring about a healing in so many. We are told at least 100,000 came every year to that little village of ours to be blessed by the saint. We are indeed lucky to have St. John Vianney. He may not look like a happy face, but he was a joyful person. And so as we go through this Eucharist, let us pray that through the intercession of St. John Vianney, people today will be healed of their infirmities, that their hearts would be warmed, that you and I, as parishioners of St. John Vianney, will continue to know and love Jesus and follow Christ in compassionate service, just like our patron, St. John Vianney. May we heal wounds and warm hearts like he did.